So fresh off the heels of what I think is one of the greatest plugin updates of all time, Fabfilter's EQ Pro Q4, now they're dropping a new version of their compressor, Pro C3. And anyone that watches my channel knows these plugin reviews I do, they're never sponsored. I don't even like buying new plugins. I think most of them are actually a waste of time and money. So I'm just gonna tell it to you straight. What are my favorite new features? What do I think will actually be useful to you? And of course, we'll answer the question, is it worth your money or not? So I've put the compressor in full screen mode so we can see it in all its glory, because I do think Fabfilter is the king of aesthetics when it comes to the front end plugin design. I mean, this is subjective, but I think all the updates to these plugins they're doing, I think the design looks so nice and modern and sleek. But the thing about design is there's always a trade-off between design and functionality. Like, this is really nitpicking here, but what they've done with like the hold and range buttons, I think it looks really nice. But if you look at the older version of the plugin, these bars are just like physically a lot bigger and easier to see and easier to like make a quick adjustment to. And I know this seems like a tiny thing, but like in Fabfilter's EQ, if you go in the spectral EQ mode, the controls are so tiny down here. So I just wanted to mention, like, I feel like Fabfilter sometimes sacrifices functionality for design and aesthetics. Like, this looks like a beautiful plugin, but these buttons for the spectral EQ are so small, like you really have to squint your eyes sometimes while you're making these changes in a mix. But I do want to give props to Fabfilter's engineers. Like, their plugins look amazing and this new compressor is no different. I just needed to mention that sometimes those looks come at the cost of a little bit of functionality. But let's start off with some new features. So if you go down to the sidechain section down here, you'll see internal, external, and then host sync, which is totally new. So this is gonna be really good to get that like pumping sidechain compression effect. So if I put on like my favorite sidechain settings, super fast, attack and release, and I definitely wanna add some look ahead time in here so I can see the trigger coming in advance, and I'll turn the ratio up all the way. So now all of a sudden we get this really precise pumping effect that's syncing to the host BPM of our project. And then we can change the length of that pulse down here, which obviously changes the feeling of that pumping effect. And it doesn't have to be a quarter note. You can also do an 8th note, 16th note, dotted notes, triplet notes. So you could actually use this as a pretty creative, like even like almost a tremolo or volume shaping effect if you really wanted to mess around with this. Now I do have kind of a hot take on what seems like it would be the killer feature, but I don't actually use this feature. And that's if you have the latest version of Pro Q4 now, if you go to instance view, now you can see the compressor in here too, and you can see a couple other plugins. So you could see like a full Fabfilter signal chain and just edit everything in one view without having to pop back and forth between tracks and between plugins. And I do think this feature is sick. Like, they've basically built like a whole new DAW within your DAW, but I mix tracks every day, and for whatever reason, I don't use this as part of my workflow. Like, I just have other things that I like to do when I'm mixing a track than mix in this view right here. But I can imagine if you're someone that likes tweaking all these different parameters on different tracks at the same time, that you're gonna like absolutely love this feature and it's gonna be your favorite feature. I just don't use it. So moving on, they've also added 6 new modes to this compressor. So there's versatile, which is a new mode, smooth, upward, TTM, and then Opel and Veramu. So let's go through some of those. I mean, versatile is gonna be exactly what it sounds like. It's gonna be good on a wide range of things. And then you have smooth, which is gonna be good on sounds like this. I probably won't be using this mode on drums or anything really punchy, but like that's the thing about compressor modes is you don't need to know the math and the algorithms behind every mode. You just gotta mess around and feel out what modes sound good to you on which sounds. Like if we go down to these new vintage modes, these are meant to emulate like analog compressors, tube compressors, So you should get a little bit of a warmer sound out of them, and they should sound a little more natural on certain things. But again, the little technicalities of these modes are not that interesting to me. It's more just fun to mess around with them and see what sounds good. Now, a couple of the modes that are more interesting to me are the fact that they added upward compression in this update. So normal compression, as your sound goes above a threshold, it turns the sound down. Upward compression, as your sound goes below the threshold, it turns your sound up. So it's the complete opposite. So with upward compression, we actually want to start with the threshold all the way down, because then as we turn this threshold up, any sounds that go below the threshold will start to be turned up. So for example, the hi-hats were lower than the kick in this drum mix, but now if I compare it on and off, that's the normal drum mix without it. Hear how much louder the hi-hats get? That's because it's upwardly expanding those hi-hats to get louder because they're below the threshold. So then the other new mode that goes along with that is TTM, which means to the max, which adds both upwards and downwards compression. So it's kind of like OTT, which I'm sure you've all used. So I wanted to compare that with how OTT sounds, because OTT is also doing that upwards and downwards compression. I think OTT sounds like harsh a lot of the time when you put it on things. And with this, you still get that like overly compressed sound, but it doesn't sound as harsh. It just sounds a little more natural, even though there's some really extreme compression going on. All right, enough about the modes. Let's talk about another new feature, which is this character section, which is really just adding analog saturation to the compression. So like you can crank up the drive. So tube is a little more subtle, and then diode is gonna be a little harsher. And then they have this bright mode. And you can also control whether the saturation is happening before the compression or after. So I think that's a cool feature to have. Like you can add in some saturation without having to pull up another plugin. But if I really wanted to dial in some saturation, I could also just pull up Fabfilter Saturn 2 plugin after this. But I'm not complaining, like it's a cool feature to have built into the compressor. Now another new feature to mention is the auto threshold control. So like let's say you have a singer who sings really loud in the first verse, and then for whatever reason in the second verse, she got a lot quieter. So what you would do is you would compress the vocal normally in the first verse, and then you could lock in, once you find a good threshold, you could lock it in on auto mode, and then when she gets quieter in the second verse, it would automatically adjust the threshold to that input level, so you'd get the same level of compression in the second verse as the first verse. And other like power user features that I probably won't use that much are, I mean, you basically have a full instance of Pro Q4 down here now, so it's a lot more customizable what you can do to affect the sidechain input. Also on each of these bands now, you can select whether it's a mid band or a side band. So you can get really granular with this control. Like, I don't know if I'm ever gonna use that, but maybe in some like niche use case, I'll end up needing it. Then you've got the stereo link over here, which controls, is your sidechain input affecting the left and right channels differently, or is it affecting them the same? And I think this has support for Dolby Atmos now, which I don't use, but could be helpful for some people. Anyway, now I wanna answer the question, is it worth your money? So like there's a lot of cool new features, but I wouldn't say anything is like a must have. It depends what you're gonna use it for. Like if you're really into mixing like me, I'm mixing tracks every day. This is gonna be really helpful for me. I think it's a great update to an already amazing plugin. But if you're more of like a casual producer and you're not gonna use all like the power features on here, then you don't need to be paying $200 for this brand new plugin unless you're gonna use it a lot. But if you already have Pro C2, you can get the upgrade price for $70. So I would say it's worth it for the upgrade price. I mean, I will say it's my favorite compressor. It's the one I'm gonna use all the time, but I don't think it's like a must have like I think Fabfilter's EQ is. Like I think Pro Q4 is absolutely must have. Like every producer, no matter what you do, should have that plugin. This is more of like it's an awesome compressor, but like you could make great mixes without it too. But I do think Fabfilter is really at the top of the plugin game, like sonically and visually. I just think they have the best plugins. Like, I don't even think anyone else comes close, honestly. So I hope that was helpful. I do want to mention I have a totally free mastering course. If you want to check that out, I'll link it below, or you can go to bigzcourses.com/mastering. And other than that, I'll catch you next time. Peace.
I don't depend on what you're gonna do.